Lesson 2. Kandy Communications Platform as a Service. Upon successful completion of this lesson, you will be able to describe the components of the Kandy Platform as a Service solution, identify which Kandy features can enhance your own business applications, describe the difference between Kandy APIs and SDKs, and obtain self-help on Kandy resources and sample applications. In this training, we're going to cover what are embedded applications, APIs and SDKs, the Kandy platform and which are the key features, what's the consumption model for the platform, Kandy resources for developers, and a quick tour of the Kandy Developer Portal. But let's start with the concept of embedded communications. In reality, it's not a complicated concept. Embedded communications explains the concept of taking an existing application and enriching it with real-time communications to provide a higher value proposition. Kandy allows you to make real-time communications an integral part of any application. You can add voice, video, messaging, collaboration, and many other real-time communication capabilities to your app to provide a better value to your customers. And the way you can do this is by using Kandy APIs and SDKs. For those in the audience who don't know what APIs and SDKs are, let's do a quick introduction here. An API, also known as Application Programming Interface, is an interface that exposes capabilities and functions to programmers. Basically, it's like being able to call a software function from a regular program. The only difference is now this function is running somewhere else, normally a third-party service. The APIs are the building blocks for application development. In fact, you may have been using APIs already. Any programmer that uses Windows or Mac OS or any other operating system is using function calls into the operating system to get things done. Those are also called APIs. The thing is that recently, APIs have become the buzzword because almost everyone who's someone in the internet is now exposing their functionality by means of APIs to allow people to use those functionalities on other applications and provide much more value to the end customers. SDKs, on the other hand, are basically like a bundle. You take the APIs and then you take other tools that are required to build an application and you put them together into a bundle. Normally a set of files or a set of source code or documentation materials. The sort of tools that you would need to allow someone to develop for a certain platform on a certain operating system or in a certain system. In our case, for example, we have SDKs for iOS, for Android, and for JavaScript. In the diagram below, you can see how Kandy abstracts all the different complexities of the network into easy-to-use SDKs and APIs. At the bottom, you can see the network interfaces for the PSTN to access SMS and be able to send and receive text, or to connect to the SIP network or the IMS network. Then on top, you have the Communication Platform as a Service solution, which is basically an orchestration layer that converts all those API calls you're going to be making into whatever commands need to be done so that things happen in the network. And then those APIs that we have are bundled into documentation libraries and all sorts of supporting materials to provide an SDK for Android, for iOS, and for JavaScript. Finally, on top of these SDKs, you can build your own mobile or web applications or even desktop applications using JavaScript. APIs are becoming increasingly important because, as many analysts are naming them now, they're becoming the new on-ramp for the transforming virtualized network. And we can see there is an evolution from legacy networks to evolved networks. We have gone from physical connections, from purpose-built hardware and manual deployments where everything had to be properly planned, analyzed, and measured before it's deployed, to a set of evolved networks where everything runs around APIs, is software-defined, and is virtualized and elastic, where you can just quickly spin up a new virtual machine and get a new service up and running. Service providers are also opening APIs into their core network to allow applications to send voice calls or text messages, to allow developers to use the capabilities on their network. And there are ecosystems that are appearing around all these APIs that are providing much more value to the end users. In the end, today there are already millions of web and mobile developers that can build applications with these APIs, and for that purpose we try to make our APIs and SDKs as simple as possible. Most of the Kandy real-time communication APIs rely heavily on WebRTC. However, we abstracted in a way that there is really no WebRTC knowledge required. Kandy takes care of everything, and if you have to integrate the applications into your website, we also have plugins for Laravel, Drupal, WordPress, and Salesforce to make it easier for you. We also provide iOS and Android reference applications so that you don't have to start from scratch, and we also provide PhoneGap plugins if that's the technology you want to use. One important thing is that our mobile SDK is designed to preserve battery life and provide optimal performance on unreliable networks. We have done that work for you so that you don't have to focus on those details. Now, the access to the REST APIs is done directly so that you can have full control if that's what you need, but normally you would use them from the SDKs. We use HTTPS end-to-end encryption to guarantee security, and we have an abundance of supporting materials on the website, tutorials, code samples, reference applications, and more. And to make learning even easier, we also have CodePen examples where you can just get in, tamper with the code, and see the results in real time. Now, there are other vendors out there that will also give you APIs, but it is important that you choose the right API for the job. Many out there are still trying to provide you telco APIs. In fact, many of them are just taking the traditional SIP APIs or SIP protocols and encapsulating them over a WebSocket so that you can still use SIP with WebRTC. This is a valid approach, and it works, but then you get no benefits, you're just encapsulating the complexity. The problem with telco APIs is that they're going to be using telco protocols, Parlay, SIP, which you can still put over WebSocket, and SS7, which you can also put over IP using SIGTRAN. But you will need to have deep technological knowledge of the telco protocols, because the abstraction of the network topology is much more limited than when you use REST-based APIs, and there are relatively few developers available. Finding professionals who know how to code on SIP, SS7, or Parlay is really complicated. On the other side, we decided to base our APIs for WebRTC around REST, which is the de facto standard for APIs on the internet. And we're using web protocols such as XML, JavaScript, JSON, or other sorts of JavaScript environments. What it means is that you don't have to have technical telco knowledge. You can completely abstract the network topology and the call flows. You don't need to know how a call flow happens. You just tell the network, hey, make a call for me, and it happens. And the best part is that you're never going to run out of developers because there are plenty of developers out there who can understand JavaScript and who can use REST APIs. But because we know some people in the audience like to know how things work inside, we have prepared a layered architecture that shows how Kandy is built. At the very bottom, we have what we call the foundation layer that uses Ribbon's patented technology for application server, session border controller, and WebRTC gateway. These network elements are manufactured by Ribbon and are available to customers individually, but here they have been placed in a cloud environment that Ribbon hosts. These network elements provide individual services such as telephony, address book, presence, SMS, WebRTC features, screen sharing, and multi-party conferencing. And all of these components are orchestrated by the orchestration layer you see in the middle. This one takes care of provisioning, security, entitlement functionality, logging of information, data management, and analytics. All of the functionalities you need to make everything work together and to be able to monitor the service. Those capabilities are then bundled into REST APIs, which are also bundled into SDKs for JavaScript, iOS, and Android. We also have some widgets you can use, and of course, if for some reason you need to use SIP, we also allow you to connect to your lines. In particular, we use Kandy Business Solutions using SIP interfaces. Then, on top of this layer, our real-time communication platform layer, you can directly build your own applications, or if you don't have the time, you can use Kandy wrappers, which are applications that we have built using our own APIs and SDKs. Basically, we took use cases and turned them into applications that you can consume on a per seat or per usage model, depending on the different applications. It's an easy way to buy, deploy in the market, and get the desired outcomes faster. Here is a summary of all the features that Kandy can provide. The typical audio and video calls, as well as multi-party and conference calls, a wide variety of messaging services, PSTN breakout capabilities for calls, messages, and dial numbers, collaboration features such as screen share and co-browsing, and additional services such as visual voicemail, call recording, or voice-to-text transcription. The consumption model for Kandy is very flexible. On the left, we have column 0, our baseline, which is the do-it-yourself model. It's basically when you don't use a cloud real-time communication platform and you have to use your own infrastructure. You need to figure out your own real-time communication platform, how you're going to build it, and you have to invest some time in creating your own APIs and SDKs, which is very time-consuming and costly. And then on top of that, you can start using the assets that you have created to embed real-time communications into your applications. Now, what that model allows you to do depends on how much you want to invest or how easy you want it to be. Hopefully, there are different models that allow you to go faster to market. The first one is what we call the API model. In this model, you use the Kandy infrastructure, the Kandy platform, and the APIs and SDKs from Kandy. Simply put, you bolt on Kandy into your network, and then you use those APIs and SDKs to embed real-time communications onto your own applications. The second model leaves a little bit more work to Kandy by using Kandy wrappers. In this case, everything runs from the Kandy cloud, and you can also have wrappers which you can consume or resell on a per seat or per user mode. The third model is basically the full end-to-end solution. With some customers, we've reached this point. For example, with SAP, we have integrated Kandy into their SAP Cloud for Customer solution for CRM, or with IBM, we have integrated our unified communications with their IBM Connections Cloud environment into the IBM Real-Time Communications client. And finally, the fourth model is a licensing and white label model. In this case, the customer owns the infrastructure with the virtualized platform, and Ribbon installs the Kandy platform within it. And then the customer can use those APIs and SDKs to create functionality into their own applications. And there can also be a hybrid model where we can still do number 4 and use wrappers on it. It would be like number 2, but instead of the Kandy infrastructure in the bottom, you could have the customer infrastructure. And those models are summarized here. On the left, you see that we can provide a public cloud solution where you consume everything from the Kandy cloud and you connect your network using zip trunks and APIs for operation and management, to get billing, and to do provisioning, and a broadband connection to receive and transfer the data traffic in and out of Kandy. The second model would be the private cloud model on the right, where you own the infrastructure. We inject Kandy into your own private cloud, whether it's OpenStack or NFV, or we can also build a private instance of Amazon Web Services in which you can run Kandy by yourself, not shared with anybody else. But we can manage Kandy for you, and we can keep it updated with the latest functionality. And on top of that, you can also put Kandy wrappers if you want, or you can use the APIs and SDKs to put your own applications. When you do this, you're still connected to your core using zip trunks and media and integration APIs for OSS and BSS for building and provisioning. And finally, there is a hybrid model in the middle that allows you to keep some data private in your network without having to invest in a full private cloud infrastructure. You can keep the media local, but still use the capabilities from Kandy. All this flexibility allows you to go with our pay-as-you-grow model, as we're representing here in this pots and plants metaphor. You can grow based on your monthly active subscribers or based on capacity in terms of maximum concurrent sessions. This way you can ensure you're only paying for what you're using, but you're not limiting yourself for growth. For example, you may see a huge growth on your active subscribers, but not on your usage, or the other way around. You may see little growth on your customer base, but they're using your services more often. Regardless of the scenario, Kandy has got you covered. And all of this with the peace of mind that you get from a global network that is fully redundant and automatically scalable. We have points of presence in key global locations that are ready to connect to your network by means of a simple zip trunk over a VPN, or if you want to guarantee quality of service and enforce service level agreements, a dedicated MPLS link using one of our preferred carriers. Finally, once you have Kandy attached to your network, you're going to need resources to learn how to use it. Well, rest assured that we have plenty of information for you. We have a portal, developer.kandy.io, where you can go and find information about our REST APIs and our different SDKs. You have quick starts and components you can reuse, and you have also sample applications you can run to test your applications or to be able to play with the solution and make sure that whatever you're developing is working. One of these applications is the Kandy Communicator. You can obtain this from the Android application store. It's only available for Android at the moment, or you can just run it from the website clicking on the link that you see here. What it lets you do is log in using the username and password that you obtain from the Kandy developer portal when you get your Kandy APIs, and it allows you to connect the users that you have created for your project so that you can test if they can talk to each other or to your application and not have to worry about building that other end of the communication to make sure that your application is working. And now we're going to take a quick walkthrough of the Kandy portal. To access the developer portal, you just have to go to developer.kandy.io. And here you'll find everything you need to get started with Kandy. If you don't have an account yet, you can just enter your email and you click on Get Kandy and you'll get 5 free accounts that you can use for 30 days. But the meat of this page is actually on the menu on the top right corner. Here is where you can find the quick starts, the references, and the access to the support community. The quick start section includes everything you need to get started on the JavaScript, iOS, and Android SDKs. For each and every one of them, you get here multiple methods and multiple examples of how to use the Kandy APIs. So let's take an example and go, for example, to IP calls. When you see here IP calls, you can still change between JavaScript, iOS, and Android. And then on the left-hand side, you get all the different API calls that you can use to set up an IP call, to reference a call, to make a call or reject it, to answer a call, etc. And the best part of it is that there is a code pen option so that you can play with the different options for the code and you can see how it works. So once you have a Kandy account, you can go into code pen in each and every section. You can manipulate the code that you have in here, the JavaScript and the HTML. Here, for example, you can put your project key, the username and the password that you have created for your users in your project. And then down here, you'll see how you can make a call, how you can kind of manipulate those APIs. So it's really powerful. If you're a developer, you can quickly get started. Now, we mentioned that there is a JavaScript, iOS, and Android information here. So based on the application you're trying to develop, you'll find everything you need. For each and every SDK, you'll have the different options here for the kind of capabilities that Kandy provides, whether it's calling or messaging, for example, or push notifications, how to do different things. And for every of these options, you have examples of the code for the different methods that you have to do. And most of them at the end will also have the option to play with a demo or a reference application. Finally, on the references section, you have more detailed information on the individual APIs. Here you can click on REST APIs and you'll get all the documentation, and you can switch on the different versions of the APIs to see how things have changed from one version to the other, depending on which application you're using. So all of the information is here. You can quickly get in there and get examples of code and get everything you need. The final section would be the support. If you're running into a problem while you're developing your app with Kandy, you can either check the frequently asked questions here, where there is already some information about typical issues with certain things like phone gap or JavaScript, etc. Or you can just click submit a request to write your own support request, and one of our Kandy technicians will provide you an answer as soon as possible. And that's it. When you have an account, you can click on login to manage your account and to manage the different projects and the different users you have. And there is also a quick description here of the different elements that you can do with Kandy in terms of voice and video, rich messaging, or collaboration. There's really not much that I can explain here. It's better if you just go in there and play with it. And if you're a developer, you're not going to need a lot of guidance. You're going to be able to find everything you need. Thank you for watching Lesson 2.